how's it going, guys? Rob the Awesome here, and today we're going to be looking in depth at the recently added competitive revamp update. More specifically, we'll be analyzing the new weapon changes that were added and deciding whether or not they are good and if the changes themselves affect any of my best and worst videos.
Let's go!
This video serves to give my overall opinion on the update, as well as give some informative insight into whether any of my lists got changed. I'll go one by one between specific class changes, give my opinion on them, and give insight and reason to why the list may or may not have gotten changed. Afterwards, I'll give my take on what I think of the update as a whole, and then give you guys further information as the video rolls on. This is a perfect opportunity to kill two birds with one stone, or in other words, to knock off my impressions of the update and if there are any changes to my best and worst lists in a single video format. Sit back and relax, and get ready for the show. The competitive update served to change two things about the Scout's weapons that got buffs in the Jungle Inferno update. First up on the chopping block, we've got the atomizer. As Valve states, people were aiming to get a third free jump by simply switching to the weapon and switching out in a matter of milliseconds. Their original take was to commit to the melee if you were to get the triple jump ability. So as such, they made it so that in order to get the triple jump in the first place, you need to have the atomizer fully out before you will grant you that power. This change is fair and oddly really well done. The atomizer, in my opinion, is definitely a top tier Scout melee. It was a little too easy to abuse the triple jump, but now, a lot like the winger, you need to have it functioning in real time to have any suitable and non-exploitable use. There wasn't a lot that was changed about the atomizer, so there isn't a lot to talk about. That being said, I give this balance change a thumbs up. As for the best and worst list, I haven't made a Scout melee video yet. I knew when I started the series that these set of weapons were going to get drastic changes. I'm going to save the best for last, and you better believe there are some phenomenal choices secretly lying in the Scout's arsenal. Another well-needed change was that of the Pretty Boy's pocket pistol. This crappy secondary got a major buff in the Jungle Inferno update to increase DPS and dish out massive healing all in a single clip. The devs admit they underestimated how much a clip could replenish health in the hands of a decent scout, healing up to 63 health per clip in a matter of 2 seconds flat. To revert the changes in a non-threatening way, they reduced the health intake to 3 per shot anywhere on the map, giving you only 27 health total per clip. This change is also really good and really fair. Being able to get a small health pack for your troubles in any situation is still pretty good. And besides, the health was always the bonus part anyways. The Pretty Boy's pocket pistol still does more DPS than stock without losing anything valuable. 3 less bullets in the clip? The reload is so fast that it doesn't even matter. It's still a top tier secondary without it being changed into uselessness. I give this change a massive thumbs up. As for the best and worst list, the Scout secondaries video is definitely in need of a changing after the Jungle Inferno update. The only changes I would make is that instead of the critical being on the top and the Pretty Boy's pocket pistol being at the bottom, I would switch the roles completely and leave the list as it is. The pocket pistol is stock but better, while the critical gives you nothing for your troubles, even giving the enemy a free critical effect for missing a crucial shot. Despite the bonk and the guillotine and many other secondaries getting changed, they continue to keep their placements on record. But because it's merely 2 items getting flipped on the list, there isn't a drastic need to make another video anytime soon. This fan-favorite shotgun got a change that would benefit its damage and scaling a whole lot more. Everybody loves the panic attack, and who can blame him? He has a slick design and a decent gimmick, but admittedly, it was the worst shotgun in the game by far. Trading in 4 extra up-close damage for crap damage at short to mid-range? Count me out. Don't take my word for it, even the devs were saying it felt weak close in and at short range. I guess I was right all along. To make the shotgun a bit better, they reduced the damage penalty by 10% and reduced the worst case shot pattern spread by 40%. That sounds pretty neat, right? Instead of 4 damage up close, you can perform 18 extra damage now at devastatingly close range. However, the problem with the bullet spread still stands, as if you manage to miss a small amount of pellets, it becomes the stock shotgun but worse in damage. But didn't you read that? They reduced the worst case shot pattern spread by 40%. No way am I missing pellets now. Read the buff carefully. Reduce the worst case shot pattern spread by 40%. They only made it so that if you held the button down to shoot, then the spread wouldn't be as bad as it originally was. The startup spread is frankly the same as it was before, and if you were the type of person to click with every shot to avoid it, then the buff doesn't present itself to you. All they did was up its damage by a wee bit, but it unfortunately still has the same problems. At short to mid range, it continues to do half the damage, if not even less than that of the stock shotgun. Test it out for yourselves. But if you manage to get butt spankingly close, you'll pull off 18 more damage, which is not that great and highly unlikely in realistic situations. The panic attack is still low tier, however I'll rate this change meh. It's not a bad change, but it could have seriously been better. Admittedly, it's a neat finisher tool for casual games and can be a side grade in pubs, but overall, it's super unreliable. The extra damage doesn't make a huge impact in gameplay. The switch 2 speed gives you the first shot, but doesn't increase DPS since every other shotgun can catch up in no time, and you overall lose out on DPS against decent or higher opponents who know advanced movement. The gimmick lives on, but the better choice is still the stock shotgun, or even its quick drawing damage number twin, the reserve shooter, for the sheer fact that range makes a huge factor in realistic gameplay, making half the damage loss at close to mid-range a huge and critical thing. As for my best and worst list, the heavy secondaries, pyro secondaries, and engineer primaries are all unaffected. The change was so minor that it still continues to be a low tier weapon. All of those lists continue to stay the same, but at least you can do a tiny bit more damage at unrealistically eye-touching close range. Be sure not to miss a single pellet though by going headfirst into enemies and going against your class's roll, or else you'll be doing considerably less than the stock shotgun. Doing these things will really help out your team. Play smart and have fun. The Pyro got a whole lot of changes that made his new weapons, as well as some older ones, a little bit more viable overall. We gotta start with the primaries, or in a general sense, every single flamethrower. Everyone who participated in the Jungle Inferno update understands just how strong the flamethrower was when it was buffed. They were so strong that it was common to see a Pyro win a 1v5 fight like it was nothing. The developers realized this and decided to make some changes, starting with flame damage ramping up based on the density of the flame, up to 200% if you focus a singular target. They also reduced the flame DPS by half, doing less damage than before and rewarding players for focusing the flame in a single location. This was certainly a well-needed nerf. Flamethrowers feel fair now and even do full damage like before in the hands of an expert. There wasn't anything drastic change to the weapon's playstyles or the specific stats of the primaries themselves. All in all, the damage is exactly where it should be at without being the strongest contender on the battlefield. I'd rate this buff a 2 thumbs up. It feels like Valve really understood the problems that the flamethrowers were having and did the right thing for every party involved. Before we get into whether or not anything changes in my Pyro primary best and worst list, there was another primary that got some changes too. There were some tweaks and fixes to our good friend, the Dragon's Fury. This easy to use flamethrower produces huge damage for proper aim, and it wasn't too hard to land your shots when the hitbox was the size of a barn. Valve felt like the design was where it should be at, and agreed that the hitboxes were a little too big for rewarding good damage, so they reduced the size and radius of the fireball by 25%, as well as making the bonus damage applicable only when the center of the fireball hits, making the extra damage even more rewarding for accurate players. Some people have said that the mechanic is a bit too strong and can even do more damage than the flamethrower. There aren't any damage changes here, but instead accuracy and hitbox changes to make it a tad bit harder to achieve that damage in the first place. The welcome change is something everybody can enjoy. If you like the Dragon's Fury, you still have the same mechanics, and if you hate the Dragon's Fury, it actually requires a tad bit more skill to hit shots. I give this change a big ol' thumbs up. Great work on Valve's part to not give this weapon a huge nerf that it didn't need. Now that the entirety of the Pyro primaries are dealt with, does anything change on my best and worst list? Though it is true that the flamethrowers got changed, nothing specific was changed about them, and thus the list is the exact same even now. The only thing that would change about the list is the addition of the Dragon's Fury. I'll have to do more research on that, but for the list that we have now, every flamethrower got buffed and nerfed together, and thus the listing doesn't go through any fundamental changes in need of another list anytime soon. The Pyro changes don't end there. Secondary options were reworked to balance certain game modes and aspects overall. Secondaries like the Gas Passer was untouched in the pub setting, but had some major changes when it came to the MVM game mode. The Gas Passer was insane in MVM, pretty much the go-to choice all the time. Even Valve agreed it was too strong for its own good. To balance this, they changed the Explode on Ignite upgrade to no longer refill charge on damage, fixed up a couple of bugs that resulted in multiple explosions, and in short increased the explosive damage by 100 to balance the output of the nerfs. To be honest, I'm not all that into MVM. I used to be, but ever since Valve kinda kicked the can with the whole idea, I sort of did the same thing. I can tell you this though, the Gas Passer in MVM continues to feel like a good secondary option while not being too strong for its own good. Nothing changes in pubs though, which is pretty much the statistic I care about, but for all you MVM junkies out there, rejoice! I rate the Gas Passer change a thumbs up. Great change for its brokenness in MVM, while staying true to its efforts in casual. Before we get into whether or not anything changes in my Pyro secondary best and worst list, another secondary got a change in the making. These new weapons tend to get the upfront treatment, and it's no different with the thermal thrusters. The biggest issue with this mobile secondary was that the holster speed was abysmal in regular gameplay. It took way too long and it was impossible to do any ambush ambush plays if your weapons didn't come out at the correct time. The devs were totally okay with the holster time, but after watching players take it out for a spin, they decided to reduce the holster time by 0.3 seconds to be able to apply your weapons faster on the battlefield. 0.3 seconds doesn't seem like a whole lot, and through testing, it didn't feel like much change at all. However, the reduced holster time lines up perfectly to the point where you aren't taking it out too late, but at the same time you aren't pulling it out too early either. It's a balanced time set that makes the weapons work without being too strong. The mobility is still the same, but at least one of the biggest issues with this weapon was fixed for the better. I rate this change a thumbs up, a good change that makes this weapon a whole lot easier to use. As for my best and worst Pyro secondary list, the gas passer and the thermal thruster changes were so minor that the list continues to stay the same. They are both mid-tier weapons with very situational use, while the panic attack remains at the bottom for being disgustingly bad in normal gameplay. Yeah, I brought it back up again. People have to realize it's a side grade at best in a pub and a mere downside against decent or competitive players. The list stays the same and is good even to this day. The last Pyro change we have to focus on is one that got a huge benefit from its previous changes. Gotta love bringing the Extinguisher back from the dead. The devs totally went with a redesign that better reflected the ambush-like style the weapon produced while giving a fair offset for its powerful gain. The new design works as such. Attacks with this weapon mini-crit burning targets as well as extinguishes them for a one-time use. The overall base damage is reduced to 33% and the holster time is also reduced to 35%, which is definitely better than it was before. Lastly, they added a mechanic called SketchX Bequest, which gives you a 3-second speed boost when you kill someone with this weapon, making for speedy plays to happen on your murderous rampage. I can't tell you how excited I was when this change happened. It was iffy and still decent before, but now it's even better. The mini crit damage on burning players is fair and accessible, and being able to put out the fire on hit makes for a fundamentally fair playstyle that revolves around finishing the kill rather than using it for first rate damage. The damage penalty is fine, since pyro melees revolve around utility, and the utility of flare punching continues with these brand new changes. But what about the holster speed? It's definitely better than before. Pair it with the degreaser and the downside basically vanishes on use. It's good to see this weapon come back to life, and as a cherry on top, the devs added a nod to a beloved YouTuber in our community. Good on you, Valve. Good on you. I rate these changes 3 thumbs up. It's wonderfully balanced and useful as it originally should have been from the start. As for my best and worst Pyro melee list, which is one of the longest running lists to date, it continues to stay the same for over 2 years now. Can I get a round of applause for that? That's some accomplishment, I've gotta say. Even after all these major updates, the list continues to stay put with no major changes. The Extinguisher is still in the top 3 best melee for Pyro. The only thing this list could use is the addition of the hot hands for the Pyro, but we can all say with confidence that it goes directly at the bottom, even below the 3rd degree. And yes, the 3rd degree is a straight psychological downgrade to stock. You can complain all you want, but it's definitely true in realistic gameplay. The list continues to impress, and it will shine brightly moving forward into the future. The engineer was definitely in need of some balance changes. A lot of the primaries and secondaries he had lying around were just too weak to be usable whatsoever. That's where the short circuit takes center stage, where it receives some interesting new features to make it more viable. The devs thought that the previous mouse 2 ability was a bit too strong when it came to countering projectiles and locating spies, especially with how cheap it was to do it. They wanted to up the skill depth while staying practical as a projectile destroying weapon, and the way they handled it was to completely change the mouse 2 ability itself. It takes 65 metal to use this newfound ability, and it shoots out a giant energy ball that can destroy projectiles and damage any nearby enemies within a medium range. I will admit that the energy ball is pretty cool to look at. It's pretty big and can be super scary when it's coming right for you. But just how good is this energy ball compared to the auto lock system that we had before? Can it track spies, suck up projectiles easier? Does it do insane amounts of damage? The answer to all these questions is no, and here's why. You'd think that for the cost of 65 metal, which is practically a third of your reserves, that it would be insanely helpful in your engineering adventures. However, it's just another neat gimmick that belongs in the trash. It roughly does between 15 damage per tick if the enemy gets stuck in the energy orb. That's not a lot of damage to suffer through and doesn't compare to the 20 damage per tick that the autolock ability did to nearby enemies. Not to mention, the ball moves very slowly. You'd have to be blind not to dodge such an obvious attack. But what about absorbing projectiles? Is that function better than before at least? The energy ball is big, but the hitbox for absorbing projectiles is right in the center of the orb and not the glowing edges. It's a hassle to take away sticks on the floor, and because it's easy to go around, it won't stop a bombing soldier or a projectile class that can press his A or D keys. Finally, it doesn't track spies. You could risk firing a ball to see if a spy is there, but you probably won't do much but waste a huge chunk of your metal. It's 65 metal to fire one of these meme balls. Bring out your Mega Man Lodos because this is the ultimate cosplay tool that does absolutely nothing but waste a secondary item. It's too expensive and is not even remotely close to the viability of the last mouse to attack. I rate this change a thumbs down. I'm not sure what Valve was thinking when they made this. It's cool, but I just want the old mechanics back. They should make this new secondary ability and turn it into a new weapon. I think a majority of the community would prefer that than taking away already existing abilities. As for the best and worst engineer secondary video, it still stays the same. The Wrangler and the Short Circuit have gone through so many changes and makes them even more situational, and thus making the list truer than it was before. That's just one more list I don't have to change. Thank you, Valve, for your reasonable yet non-threatening balance updates these past couple of years. The last change this update brought us was one for our good old mate the Sniper, helping to improve one of his weaker primaries, the Sydney Sleeper. Although the devs find the Girardi from a range is far too powerful, despite the fact that it's a low tier primary for a reason, they ultimately decided to tone it down a bit to make it fair against enemy players. The first thing they did was remove the increased splash effect on headshots or full charge body shots, only affecting single targets from here on out. They also reduced the length of the Girardi effect by 3 seconds on maximum impact, from 8 seconds to a measly 5 seconds for half a normal Girardi effect. Lastly, they made it so that the Sydney Sleeper gets mini crits on headshots and reduces the Girardi timer by 1 for every headshot landed. There is a lot of things good and bad about these changes just from the looks of the stats, but we'll take it slow and judge it fairly. Not being able to apply a massive Girardi effect is totally fine. It wasn't very wide anyways, and players were never stupid enough to group so close together. Removing this mechanic isn't that big of a deal, and frankly, I'm glad that snipers won't be able to do something useless on accomplished headshots anymore. Moving forward, they nerfed how long the Girardi lasts on the player when hit, which is even more dreadful than people realize. A Metagora dispenser reduces the Girardi timer by half. That is why a 10-second long Girardi effect only lasts 5 seconds when a Metagora dispenser is continuously healing that target. If the maximum timer for the Sydney Sleeper is 5 seconds now, against a team with a good engineer or medic, the maximum timer is 2.5 seconds, which is not a lot of time to make effective. You would have to constantly keep landing those maximum shots or coordinate super fast with your team. Otherwise, the Sydney Sleeper's main gimmick is completely useless. Wow, it's not looking good, but we've still got one last stat to go. All headshot hits are now mini crits and reduce the timer of your Girardi by 1 second. The good thing about this is that full charge headshots are now going to produce 203 damage overall. How sweet is that? Quick scopes aren't going to give you much out of it, but at least you can do some real damage with this thing. The bad thing about this is the reduced Girardi timer. Really, Valve? Why would I want to use Girardi with a gun that can Girardi people from anywhere anyways? Like, seriously, it's a gimmicky stat that provides nothing, and in proper play, Girardi isn't really that devastating in the first place. I mean, in 6s it can stall a team for a few seconds. That's pretty neat. Everywhere else though, it's a complete whatever mechanic that can be countered really easily. It can be reflected, medic and dispenser time decrease, crappy hitbox detection, you name it, the Girardi has it. The only good thing to come from this weapon is the mini crit headshots, and that only really matters with a full charge shot. I rate these changes a very big meh. They aren't the worst changes, but they are either really useless or fall flat on all accounts. The Sydney Sleeper was low tier already. Why did they have to make it mediocre again? As for my best and worst sniper primary list, and to throw in there the best and worst sniper secondary list, none of these videos change one bit. Sydney Sleeper is still low tier, and Girardi, outside of just plain old 6s, is not reliable enough for needed use. So many of these lists aren't getting changes. You know how happy that makes me? Looks like I'm going to be kicking it back for a while and hope that Valve doesn't do anything crazy. Overall, the balance changes were alright. Nothing too bad or too crazy, but at the same time, I sort of wanted that to happen. When you think about how toned down the balance changes have been in the recent updates, it kind of makes you realize how little there is to balance in this game. I mean, there are some heavily underpowered weapons out there that need a buff, but a lot of weapons that are good are fairly balanced throughout. Despite what I say about any of these changes, they're all good for the weapon's sake and will provide weapons with newfound use. There were also gameplay fixes like the Enforcer, the Cowmangler, the Natasha, and others that you guys may be wondering, where are they in the video? But they were so minor that I didn't think they deserved any spotlight. They are fixes that should have happened from the very beginning, and they now make the weapon samey or decent in the long run. So that's good. As for the casual and competitive changes, I like them a lot. Casual games feel really balanced all around. I'm not getting into steamrolls or getting rolled myself much anymore. As for competitive, it's still a bit wonky. The queue times are abysmal, but when you actually find a game, it's a really fun time to be had. It does take a bit to win 10 games to play with really good players, but once you achieve the ranks, it's a nice and balanced game to play. They did a good job with the casual and competitive changes, not to mention all of the amazing bug fixes that were added as well. This was the quality of life update I've been asking for. TF2 feels like it got a breath of fresh air, and it's so nice to play again in my free time. The last thing to mention is that a bunch of my best and worst lists are still unaffected after nearly 2.5 years of doing the series. That makes me both happy that I don't have to redo them, and happy that my lists live up to the test of time. There are a few lists out there that need some changing, whether it's because there was a substantial change in power, new weapons added to the game, or because my opinions have changed over time. That, or people are memeing on me way too hard about the Liberty Launcher thing. Seriously, chill. I explained it all in the video, I promise. All in all, I think that the update was great. The changes are fine. I think this was an awesome and unexpected update that this game needed for a very long time. Thank you, Valve, for such a wonderful update. And this has been the TF2 competitive update, weapon analysis, best and worst placements, and overall thoughts. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe to let me know. What did you guys think about the update? Was it good? Was it bad? Write a comment to let me know what you guys are thinking. You guys are just one click away from more awesome videos and live streams in the future. Also, if we manage to hit 50,000 subscribers, I'll be doing a super duper unusual giveaway. So, if you got the message, write in all caps, "The panic attack is not that good," to let me know. What? It's true. Remember to be awesome, stay awesome, and to have an awesome day. I'm Rob the Awesome, and I'll see you guys later. Ciao for now.
Motherfucker, I'm awesome. No, you're not, dude. Don't lie. I'm awesome. I'm driving around in my mom's ride. I'm awesome. A quarter of my life gone by, and I met all my friends online. Motherfucker, I'm awesome. I will run away from a brawl. I'm awesome. There's no voicemail, nobody calls. I'm awesome. I can't afford to buy 8 balls, and I talk to myself on my Facebook wall. You know my pants sag low.
Oh, by the way, while I was editing this video, I was playing some competitive matches to pass the time. Was gonna make some videos about me getting to Death Merchant, but I sorta got to Death Merchant on my first try. 10 games put me in Death Merchant, so I pretty much won the game. Guess I'm too hot to handle. Alright, see you later, guys.